Welcome to the Streets and People podcast, where we explore having more transport options that are less hassle to use. Hosted by Get Around Caboolture, we bring you 3 types of episodes. People and Projects share stories of change. Not Everyone Drives gives voice to non-drivers. Roadwheels 360 unpacks road rules for people outside a car. Music by Grand Project, and let's make our Grand Project reimagining streets made for people. Today we're doing one of our People and Projects episodes. I'm here in the studio with Steven Burgess, which is super amazing because it was just last week I asked him to come on the show, but we have a hot topic at the moment here in Moreton Bay Council, which is parking reform. So he was available and I'm super stoked. I'm here on Gubbi Gubbi country in Queensland, in Caboolture. And Steven, whereabouts are you based?
Down in Latrina in Hobart, Tasmania, just at the foothills of Kenyani. It's a bit chilly and there's a bit of snow on the mountain, but yes, lovely.
What made you interested in parking reform generally? I don't quite even know what it is that you do.
Street making has become my thing, but it started many years ago. My first sort of grown-up university graduate job, I worked for the city of Brisbane, and at the time they were working on the new farm Teneriffe redevelopment, urban renewal. It was a bit foreign to me because it was the opposite to what I'd been taught at university. I was taught that we should make cars go fast, and the faster you could get them there, the better it was. And the more I learned from that project, it turned out that the more efficiently you made the cars move, the worse place you made. And returning some of those streets back to that community, and what turned out to be a whole new community that moved into New Farm, Teneriffe, Fortitude Valley, just stuck with me. As you do when you're younger, you just work on projects you're told, and people are widening roads and doing stuff, and you're just noticing that inevitably makes cities worse off, makes them less enjoyable, less productive. People get hurt in car crashes, so everything you do to keep someone out of one, that would probably be more helpful than inducing them to get into one. That's sort of been my path, and streets that people can do more exciting things in is one thing. And of course, one of the ways to help people make the transition from driving even little short distances for no particular reason is to say, look, it's really hard to get a park in this place. It's quite expensive to get a park in this place. Why don't you just walk? Like, you only live a kilometre away, or get the bus or ride your bike. Cities all around the world and towns and regions, they're all in a competitive space to get more investment, to get more young people to move there. Basically, the ones that have less car activity and less car parking, they're winning the race. You're in a competitive situation there, so the least car parking you can live with, the better off you'll be.
I've been doing this for 3 years now, and I see a lot of stuff about the city centre. Now, we're right out on the outer suburbs of Brisbane, as you know. You know Caboolture, I think, a little bit, certainly from your time in Brisbane. Well, it's not expensive to park. People take the train, they park at the station. Describe how parking reform, which is not about saying no to parking, it's saying no to wasteful parking, happen in outer suburbs areas in low density, car dependent, sprawl environments.
It's going to be the big challenge for city shapers for the next while, having made these suburbs that are cruelly car dependent. They've completely robbed people of their freedom to move and only given them one choice, which is just plain mean. And it's got to be addressed because cities can't afford for people to travel by car, and individuals can't afford to travel. It's the most expensive way to get around. It's the most dangerous way to get around. So to force people to do it as their only transport choice, just plain mean, I think. First of all, we've got to stop building new places like that, but we've got to learn to reform the old places. And maybe this Brisbane Building Better Suburbs program could be a bit of a lead as to how to do it, but someone's got to return basic services back to those urban villages. So a town centre like Caboolture should be not car free, but really minimum car space, maximum people space, so that people can walk around there and do a lot of stuff. What we tend to do in townships like Caboolture is make it convenient to zip in, do your thing, and zip back out again, which people only spend a small time in. There's lots of traffic, so it's not really enjoyable to hang out in. It's not necessarily as beautiful as it could be because it's just all open, black car spaces. So people only spend a small amount of time there, which means they only spend a small amount of money there, which means those places just aren't as successful as a place where you have to park right out on the edge and walk around in and engage with the place. Or, oh, look, it's just too hard to get in, or I've got to get the train, or I've got to do something else because I can't park my car. So you're committed to the journey, you walk further, you stay longer, and you spend more. Which is why retail centres, like town centres with less car parking spaces, they always make more money because people walk further and they stay longer, and because they're there for longer, and naturally the affinity is you can spend more. Retailers cannot get at anyone's wallet when they're going past in a car. They can only get to it if you're walking past. But people in Caboolture West or people in the other villages around Caboolture, they should have a smaller, intimate, local service centre that they can walk or ride their bike to, and then there get from a rapid bus to Caboolture, and then if you want to go to the city, you get on the train to go into the city. Poor old Caboolture, one of the worst things that happened to it was that big car park around the train station. Instead of letting 10,000 people live around that station, they forced people to live a long way away and made them drive to the station. And so people in Caboolture, they get the same amount of traffic in their town whether the train station was there or not, because everybody still gets in their car from their house and drives to the station. The state government benefits from having the train because they don't get as much traffic on the motorway, the Bruce Highway, but people in Caboolture, they got the same amount of traffic whether the train station's there or not. If they drive out to the Bruce Highway turn off or they drive to the station, it's still local traffic. So it doesn't benefit the people in Moreton Bay at all, really. The state government has less traffic on their asset. Same thing for the new Redcliffe line. Instead of making them into transit-oriented developments, they made it a car-based thing. It was just such a horrible result for Moreton Bay that it just generates all this local traffic, for pretty much no benefit, really.
Obviously, children can't drive. Many seniors can't drive, and a lot of seniors actually don't want to drive anymore because the vehicles today are just big and loud. There's a lot of aggressive driving. Queensland just hit 200 deaths this year so far on our roads, which is earlier to that point last year, and last year was the highest in 13 years, I believe. Children can't get there, seniors can't get there, people with disabilities can't get there. Now, people think that, well, they don't have money, so they're low-income people maybe, so why would you want to make it better for that demographic? People who drive, they drive in from nearby suburbs, they're maybe 5 kilometres away from Caboolture and Morayfield Shopping Centre, and they just drive in, they park and they do all the shopping, then they drive down to one of the other big box stores, and then they get the next lot of cars, and then they drive to the next, and so on. How do you develop parking reform policies in that environment?
I used to say slowly, as in be gradual about it and ease people into it. And some of the great cities who've gone from being car dominated to being people dominated have done it slowly. I'm just going to take a few away a year, put some green space in, widen some footpaths. I'm going to sneak up on the answer. But since COVID, the world's become a little bit more mobile, as in I don't have to live next to my work anymore. I can live wherever I choose. So now you're under much more pressure to be the coolest place, not just the place with the job. And so this race to get great urban spaces has become quite urgent, to the point where some cities are taking out parking in lots of 10,000, not in lots of 1 or 2, just to get ahead of the curve. Well, all of New Zealand's already done it. Cities around America are racing to get rid of their minimum parking rate, because the first cities that are removing this minimum parking rate to get development that can go in and put the right amount of parking in instead of this weird prescribed amount of parking, they're getting all the development, they're getting all the investment, they're getting all the money. So to keep up, you've got to compete. Those cities that are lagging behind and still got quite high minimum parking rates struggle to get investment, and it really exposes developers, and they don't like it. The sooner you can start to remove stuff, the better. And you mentioned there's quite a big portion of the community that doesn't drive, and you think of some of the communities, how much more money it costs, roughly $20,000 a year to run a car, how much more money they could spend on various things. It adds 10 to 15% for each space on the price of your house to buy one, because it's cost so much more to build. There's almost no advantage in forcing this parking rate onto people and forcing all these parking spaces on a community that really actually wants to be healthy and happy. And it's one of the most acute things that's stopping that from happening. Car-dominated cities, they're unhealthy and they're sad.
Council did a few years ago remove minimum parking mandates from certain housing developments. And then there was this big uproar about parking spillover, and it actually made it very difficult for emergency services to get through, and buses and garbage trucks and things like that. So there's a reticence, I think, by council to go back to that, because the minute you say parking reform, everybody immediately thinks of those examples. So what would have been a better way of managing that process? And then given that that was done poorly, what do you suggest instead?
Gets back to the point we were making before about the urban villages. You can't rob Peter without paying Paul. So you can't say, I'm going to take away your car parking spaces, but I'm not going to give you any alternative. So you've still got to buy 2 cars. If I was building an outer suburban house in Ipswich, in any of the western suburbs in Sydney or Melbourne or the northern suburbs of Adelaide, I doubt that I would build a suburban house without any car spaces, because I probably wouldn't be able to sell it. I'd put a minimum of 1 and probably 2 spaces in it. And also, by the same token, if I had 3 cars, I probably wouldn't buy a house that didn't have any car parking spaces. I'd find a place that suited me. It's certainly not up to ratepayers to provide parking for people who have got 4 cars and bought a house without a car parking spaces. Like, that burden shouldn't go back on the rest of the ratepayers. And it also shouldn't be on a developer who said, look, I've got a whole clientele here of young people. They're living quite close to the city. I'm building a whole series of cottages. And I know from my market research that only 1 in 2 of those people have got a driver's license. So why would I build them a car parking space and add $80,000 or $90,000 onto the price of their cottage for a garage that's not going to get used? The minimum parking rate, removing that's not what caused all that issue in those tight streeted suburbs. Some of that street design was pretty restrictive, so that's a thing. And lots of people who had 3 cars bought a house with 1 car parking space. That's not necessarily the rest of the ratepayers' fault that somebody did that. And also, a massive amount of those people turned their on-site car parking, their garage, into a gym, a man cave, an Airbnb room, and the ratepayers shouldn't have to pay for that either. It's way too simplistic to say, if I don't have a minimum parking rate, my streets are going to get covered in car parking. It won't happen like that. And those really rare examples where it does are more caused by those issues rather than they are with people saying, look, if I had a minimum parking rate, all this on-street parking would disappear. There are hundreds of suburbs all throughout southeast Queensland who have always had a minimum parking rate, but they still have those exact things because they've been turned into a gym or a man cave. People have got 4 cars but only buy a house with 1 car parking space. The ratepayers shouldn't have to pay for all that. That should be an individual's responsibility. If you want 4 car parking spaces, then you come up with the money to house them somewhere. But by the same token, if I haven't even got a car, why should I have to pay for 2 car parking spaces that I don't need?
It is a hugely car dependent area. I think there's definitely opportunity to perhaps increase the amount of mobility lanes, slow speeds on those areas so that you can actually feel safe riding a bike or a scooter and walking. That would make it much easier, definitely. I also know that for council, one of their big frustrations is that state pays for public transport. So they would love to be able to make these places, lots of buses, but that's a state responsibility, not a council responsibility. And council doesn't have the cash to do that level of infrastructure. I mean, they can build roads, which to me sounds very expensive. Talk me through some of that stuff.
It's more the way the cake's divided up, whether it's people have money for stuff or whatever. About half Moreton Bay's money would go on fixing roads and car parking spaces or building them, and some for half of our money. And every cent we spend on it, we get less than what we spend. Like, you don't get any return on that money. Every time someone starts a car in Moreton Bay, everyone in Moreton Bay keeps losing money until they turn it off again. Your competing villages, every time they get someone to catch a bus or walk instead of driving, they get ahead of you. And so building car-dependent suburbs economically puts Moreton Bay so far behind. One of the tricks about public transport is that, having that really, really high mandatory parking rate in Caboolture West will probably mean that they will never, ever, ever get a quality bus service. You've just doomed those people to spending all that money on driving and car crashes and obesity and loneliness and all those things that come from a car-dependent suburb. They will never be able to recover as long as there's all those car parking spaces there, because, if I was Queensland Transport, where would I invest my money? Would I invest it in a place where there's low car ownership and lots of people would catch the bus, or would I put it where all the ratepayers have got this massive subsidy to try and make driving easier? And it just makes the bus non-competitive in those environments. Minimum parking rates are a real bus killer, and it works the opposite to the way people think. Said, once we get a bus out there, people will be able. It works the other way around. Now that all those car parking spaces are out there, there is almost zero benefit for Queensland Transport to go and put a bus route out there. You've set it up. You've used all the ratepayers' money to get everybody to drive, and you've robbed those guys of any bus future out there, which is really unkind.
So let's talk about West Caboolture. It's called Warraba now. I can see they've just felling a whole tracts of land in order to be able to build the estates. The developers designed it. I don't know whether council imposed minimum parking mandates on that land, whether the state government imposed that, or how that works together. So step me through how parking reform, in this instance, how it all comes together.
Part of this suburb reform program is, well, we're going to have to improve how we do new subdivisions as well, but we're going to have to reform some of the old ones. And it's going to need to have government intervention to say, look, these suburbs that are low density, oh, well, Stevie, if you live in Moreton Bay, you've just got to own a car. That just puts you so far behind the eight ball. Like, it can't be that you have to own a car to live in a place. You have to do some repair there. So those places need to get some urban villages where people can walk to childcare, chemist, GP, local food, groceries, primary school at least, and green space. And then from that little central place where you wouldn't need any minimum parking there because there'd be shop top housing and all that sort of delicious stuff that we like in those villages, then from there you can get quite a quick bus into Caboolture Central or to wherever your local centre is, where you can get a rapid bus or a train or whatever into the CBD if you need to do that. From laying all that land out at 12, 13, 14 dwellings per hectare, one school for the whole area, for no real shops except a corporate-owned shopping centre where none of the money stays in Moreton Bay. It's just not how we're going to survive. Those suburbs almost have no economic alternative but to deteriorate. So intervention, which will be slightly awkward and will cost a little bit of money, but say, look, we need to rebuild villages in our place where you know each other, you look forward to going there. It's not, oh God, I've got to go into Caboolture today to do this and do that, I suppose. But I'll get in and out as quick as I can and spend at least, I get to walk down to the village today and I'll see my friends and I'll hang out there for a bit and I'll pick up the kids from childcare and we'll walk home or I'll ride our bike home. Like, everyone deserves to live in a place that they love. It should not just be for people who can afford to live in West End or Paddington or whatever. Everyone should be able to live in a place that they love.
I recently met with senior people at Transport and Main Roads North Coast region. So they're the people who do all the roads for this area, and they are about to duplicate all the roads. They're sort of stuck in the 1970s thinking we just need to build more roads. And actually I've been looking into the mobility productivity paradox, which says that once you've already got a road infrastructure, adding more roads actually just reduces your productivity. But council is stuck with what TMR does. Morayfield Road is horrible. I have to go along there whenever I go down there. And it is that experience of, oh gosh, I've got to get down there. And I gather up 20 things that I have to do. And I know that it would be great if I could just jump on my bike and get down there and it was pleasant. I would go down there 3 times a week, but I can't because it's so hostile, because the state forces this horrible carness and they just love building more roads.
I guess there are road builders who like building roads. Like, they've done it all their life and, that's what I'm good at. Having said that, they don't build roads for the sake of building them. They'd probably, to be fair, rather do other things. But while you're building low density subdivisions with no urban villages, and then you're building big schools that are a long way apart and big shopping centres that are a long way apart, by having that land use plan, which the state is not completely innocent in that land use plan either. They have an overarching authority to say, oh no, I'll let you build that low density. I know you'll be able to sell them and it'll get housing onto the market quickly. So they're not innocent in it. They're building roads because that low density housing is creating a demand that isn't getting met. So you can't build another 10,000 houses out here, do it at low density and plenty of parking and road space in that subdivision. So they all think they can drive and they get to Morayfield Road or wherever it is, King Street or whatever, and they all get stuck. And they're going, oh, why doesn't someone widen this? Well, I guess I have to, because there's no point them putting a bus out there because no one will catch it. Because they've all got 2 cars, they've all got their minimum car spaces. It's designed and they can't walk anywhere. They can't walk to the shop, they can't walk to school, they can't walk to the chemist. So they all have to have these cars. So I thought, well, I bought this car, I'm going to use it. Bashing up state government for building too many roads is actually a great fun sport, but it's actually not all their fault. The demand is created by that low density housing and having those big schools a long way apart and the big shop centres a long way apart, instead of creating those traditional urban villages that we actually all like. It's just that we're building places we don't like because we've created a machine that's just more efficient at doing that. And it's not because it's generically more efficient to do that. Our machine's just better at that because we practice that type of development the most.
Okay, so say you're a councillor or head of planning and you think you would like to do something. We've currently got a planning scheme review at the moment. We've got tons of new properties and new estates, lots of new developments. What can those people do to shift the situation?
I think, first of all, have a little bit of a look in there and just see how far off the urban centres in Moreton Bay, how far off they are the best they could possibly be. So think of all the great urban centres you've visited all around the world, all around Australia. Said, oh, these are my favourites. Are the urban centres, is Morayfield, Caboolture, are they up to that standard? And if they aren't, why aren't they? What could I do? Oh, well, they're all actually quite dense. They're all 5, 6 stories, and the streets are a lot narrower. They've got a lot of trees in those places that I like. Everyone's walking everywhere actually there. If they're the places I like, why don't I start building them? Yeah. And a friend of mine who helps me out in all of this housing economics has just finished doing a demand profile at the Gold Coast for me. The demand profile for detached houses is less than 16%. There's little bits to add on there. So granny flats are a little bit of that, and retirement houses. But the single family dwellings make up 60, but it's about half that are some form of detached housing. The other half of the community wants an attached house, a townhouse, a unit, a villa, not because they necessarily love attached housing. It's because they love what attached housing does for them. It gets them close to stuff. If I wanted to be a champion of Moreton Bay, my thing would be I'm going to bring back the village, I'm going to bring back local money, I'm going to bring back local communities, and I'm going to bring back smiling faces. That would be my thing for Moreton Bay. Those villages are beautiful places to live, and their travel demand is way, way lower. People get access to stuff in their own village, spending money with people they know. One of the great experiences in life is, you go into a shop and the guy says, oh, Steve, those sausages you like, I actually kept some for you. Billy wanted to buy them, but I wouldn't let him. And just this type of development has denied 2 whole generations of Australians that feeling. And to what end? So we can drive? Every time someone builds a detached house, the Moreton Bay economy goes backwards. You get further behind. Why would we keep doing that? I guess you can adjust as slow as you like, but you're in a race. And there are places that will probably adjust faster than you. And there are places, the inner urban places, that are already adjusting to doing smaller apartments, more intimate villages to get some of that affordable market back into the city. Oh, why do people come to Moreton Bay? Oh, because the housing's cheap, you can drive anywhere. I can't think of a more depressing thought. I want to go and live in Moreton Bay because it's delicious and the people are delightful and the urban villages are exciting, attractive and clean and green and safe and welcoming. That's what you should be selling. Oh, look, you can come and live here because it's cheaper. That is not Moreton Bay's future. I wouldn't have thought. So if I was in either of those positions that you described, that would be my thinking. I'm going to get from here, wherever we are, which is, it's got some great old little knobbly, nice parts, but the pearls are too far apart along the string, and the bit in between is just too urban bland, and it's not responding to what the community needs. And it certainly isn't sustainable. Moreton Bay will not be able to keep up this road building, this cars. You just won't be able to sustain it. All the infrastructure that you have to build, maintain, that just every now and again just have to keep going to the state government and say, look, you want us to do this housing, so we're going to build it all the way out here, but we need some more money for infrastructure, for roads, because we haven't got enough. Why don't we put some sand in between the rocks and get some people to live in close to where they want to. Let them live next to stuff, live next to a school, live next to a shop, a chemist, childcare, their friends. Yeah, let them smile, let them be happy.
Moreton Bay wants to become Australia's most accessible council. When I started, I didn't understand why parking was this thing that people kept saying, you've got to talk about parking, because I'm going, but what's the issue? It's just a bit of concrete. Tell me how parking reform can help Moreton Bay achieve its goal of being Australia's most accessible council.
To be Australia's most accessible council, it's the amount of places you can get without a car that determine how accessible you are. So if I can live anywhere in Moreton Bay, and if I own a car or don't own a car, I still get access to the same amount of stuff, then that's what accessibility means. Parking in and of itself is not the evil thing. It's just a subsequent part of all those things we talk about having all the things located in the wrong place, all the houses too far apart, all the houses too far away from stuff. And so then, well, if everybody's got to drive, well, then now I've got to build road space. And then I feel I've got to build car parking space. If you start to turn the screw on parking, then people start to have to get smarter about what they do. Oh, if I want to live out there, and my local shopping centre and train station, whatever, is going to be Caboolture, or it's going to be Morayfield or Redcliffe, or where it's going to be, it's pretty hard to get a park in there. I'm going to have to think about where I live. I'm going to have to think, there actually is 2 or 3 good bus routes. I better make sure I live near one of those. And then once people start to live around that bus route, then the market can respond to that. So, well, around these bigger sort of bus stations, I'm going to cut that house into 4 units. I've got demand around this bus station now because not everyone can park in the middle now. So there's demand for the land use that's around. And then the guy said, well, why don't I put my chemist and my corner shop around this big bus stop or whatever it turns out to be, train station. But as long as you just keep on endlessly supplying parking, then you can't start the economic process of people looking for an alternative because you're spending all your money inducing them onto the most inefficient, dangerous, expensive mode. Sort of done the wrong thing. Having put ourselves where we are, we have to start turning the screw to try and encourage people to expand their horizons to look for different ways to get around. Then if parking gets a little bit tighter, then Queensland Transport are quite within their rights to say, we might have to look at doing a better bus route out there. There's a bit more demand now, like parking's filling up, parking's getting more expensive. We're going to have to put more buses out to those people. But while parking's cheap and there's plenty of it, why would they? Why would you bother putting a bus out there?
A couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine came and visited from interstate, and she has a disability. And she can walk. And previously I got a mobility scooter, but she said, I don't get any exercise. And I said, maybe we could get an e-trike. And she said, no, I want to walk. So she did one day, a couple of times, try and walk. We don't have any footpaths in our street. So it's really hot. The cars go past very quickly. There's not many trees that shade the space. Now, she loves to go to cafes, buy food, whether it's at the supermarket or whether it's out at lunch, and then she loves to buy handbags and shoes. These are the things that give her a lot of joy. I look at her and I go, okay, well, she loves to do that. She wants to have pleasure. She doesn't have very many pleasures left in her life because of her disability. She can't do the things that she once loved to do. And I look at her and I think, she would easily spend on going out, buying food, meeting friends, hanging out, buying clothes. She just loves doing all that. And I thought, this is exactly what council should be looking at. That sort of journey, not going, oh, well, she's on a disability pension, so she won't have any money. But I think about mums with kids going to the cafe. After the kids have been dropped off at school, you turn around to the other mums and you go for coffee in a nearby place. I just think that would absolutely boost the economy. So that sort of money, I think, is really valuable and not yet understood by economics people in local areas.
I think the economists get it, but I get why councillors and maybe even non-economic professionals, traffic engineers, land use planners, whatever, think, oh, well, those really young people who don't drive and those people who are a bit older that don't drive, they're not important to the economy. They're actually your most important. I always say the perfect demographic is a 2-hump camel. So you need that 15 to 24 age group and then the 60-ish one. They're the first of the superannuation generation. They are rich. They just don't like to drive anymore. And if you're keeping those two demographics, I want to move to Moreton Bay, but I've got to buy a house in the suburbs and I've got to drive, the two most valuable demographics, they won't come to you. They'll only go to a place where they can live next to stuff, and they might buy 1 car per family, but a lot of them won't even buy a car because they just want to be near stuff. That young generation, once they get about 18, 19, 20, they think they're going to make lots of money, so they spend more than they earn. But even 14, 15-year-olds, whoever's got their most expensive pair of jeans in a house, you can bet it's someone in that age group, yeah? They generate spending up until 18, 20, then they sort of go to university and they get a bit sensible about their money, and then they have kids and school fees and mortgages. That demographic is not that helpful to your town. But then once they hose their kids out and change the locks, semi-retire, they don't want to move around so much. They might travel overseas a couple of times a year with their money, but they like their villages and they like to spend local money. They sometimes even start local businesses. But if you force them to live in the suburbs and drive a car, they won't come to you. They'll go to Brisbane, to the Gold Coast, to Newcastle, to Geelong, even to Parramatta, and Parramatta's a great example of how a low density Western city has made a comeback from wherever for the same thing. High density, low parking, big on public transport, walking, bike riding. It's a great recovery. So they don't have to spend as big a portion of their budget on moving around people in roads as the poor people at Moreton Bay do. And as long as you keep doing that low density housing without any services, then you're just going to keep going backwards, and your competitors are going to steal all your young people, all your old rich people, and all of your money.
That's very inspiring words. Before we close out, is there anything else you would like to add? Anything you wish I had asked and didn't? Anything else you would like to say?
I think those suburbs that got such a bad name, not just Moreton Bay, but all over Australia, they're easily fixable. And, Parramatta and Campbelltown and even Penrith, Werribee now is making a comeback. Go and have a look, see what they did. How come they're not quite so car dependent as me anymore? What did they do? What did they change? Why are they getting medium density into their villages again? Why are more local businesses opening up? Go and have a look, go and find out. Walking is the big thing, and every time you save a person driving and get them onto some other mode of transport, that's when you start to catch up. But every time you build a detached house out in the burbs and you're forcing people into a car, you're getting further behind. So be brave, make some changes, and it could be you. You could make such a hero of yourself. I wish I was doing it.
Thank you very much for coming on today and just stepping me through all things. And it was fantastic that you actually know Caboolture, and I think there is a difference between how challenging it can feel and how challenging it actually could be. And I think that's the gap you're describing.
Thank you. Completely true.
All right. Thanks so much, Steven.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Streets and People podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who'd find it helpful. Your small action could make a big difference. We're on all the usual podcasting platforms, so don't miss a single story. To find out what else we do, check out getaroundcaboolture.au. Until next time, remember, there's more than one way to get where you're going. Keep moving, keep listening, and keep imagining streets made for people.